Question 1. Compliance review shows that the proposed design for intelligent routing in the new contact center environment relies heavily on analyzing historical customer interaction data to predict future needs and personalize service. The design team is considering several approaches to implement this, but concerns have been raised regarding data privacy and regulatory adherence. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for effective intelligent routing with robust data protection and regulatory compliance? Option A. Anonymize or pseudonymize sensitive customer data before it is used for routing decisions, and obtain explicit customer consent for the use of their data in this manner for personalized routing. Option B. Store detailed customer interaction histories indefinitely for routing purposes, even if the data is anonymized, to maximize the potential for future routing optimizations. Option C. Utilize raw, unredacted customer personally identifiable information, PI, directly within the routing engine to ensure the most accurate and personalized customer experience. Option D. Infer sensitive customer attributes from the content of their past calls and use these inferred attributes to guide routing without explicitly informing customers about this inference process. Correct answer is A. Anonymize or pseudonymize sensitive customer data before it is used for routing decisions, and obtain explicit customer consent for the use of their data in this manner for personalized routing. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between optimizing customer experience through advanced routing and adhering to strict data privacy regulations. The need to personalize interactions by leveraging historical customer data for intelligent routing must be balanced against the legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive information. Misinterpreting or misapplying these regulations can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and a loss of customer trust. Careful judgment is required to design a solution that is both effective and compliant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes data minimization and explicit consent, aligning with the principles of data protection frameworks. By anonymizing or pseudonymizing sensitive customer data before it is used for routing decisions, the solution reduces the risk of unauthorized access or disclosure. Furthermore, obtaining explicit consent from customers for the use of their data in this manner demonstrates transparency and respects individual privacy rights. This approach ensures that the contact center operates within legal boundaries, building trust and fostering a responsible data handling culture. This aligns with the general principles of data privacy found in many regulatory frameworks, emphasizing the need for lawful processing, purpose limitation, and data minimization. Incorrect approaches analysis. Using raw, unredacted customer personally identifiable information, PI, for routing decisions without explicit consent is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach violates data privacy principles by exposing sensitive data unnecessarily and processing it without a clear legal basis or customer agreement. It creates a high risk of data breaches and non-compliance with regulations that mandate data protection and consent. Implementing a routing strategy that relies on inferring sensitive customer attributes from call content without explicit consent is also problematic. While not directly using PII, inferring sensitive information can still fall under data protection regulations if it leads to profiling or discriminatory practices. The lack of transparency and consent makes this approach ethically questionable and potentially non-compliant with regulations that govern the processing of personal data and prohibit unfair or discriminatory profiling. Designing a system that stores detailed customer interaction histories indefinitely for routing purposes, even if anonymized, without a defined retention policy and clear justification, poses a compliance risk. Regulations often mandate data retention limitations, requiring data to be kept only as long as necessary for the specified purpose. Indefinite storage increases the attack surface and the potential for misuse or unauthorized access, even with anonymized data. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing contact center solutions must adopt a privacy by design and privacy by default mindset. This involves proactively considering data protection requirements at every stage of the design process. The decision-making framework should include 1. Identifying all personal data involved and its sensitivity. 2. Determining the legal basis for processing this data. 3. Implementing technical and organizational measures to protect the data. E.g., Anonymization, pseudonymization access controls. 4. Ensuring transparency with customers and obtaining necessary consents. 5. Establishing clear data retention and deletion policies. 6. Regularly reviewing and auditing the system for compliance. This systematic approach ensures that solutions are not only functional but also ethically sound and legally compliant. Question 2. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive understanding of business continuity and disaster recovery requirements to design a resilient Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCE) solution. A financial services organization, subject to strict regulatory oversight regarding customer service availability and data integrity, is evaluating its UCCE DR strategy. The organization has defined its recovery time objective RTO as a maximum of 4 hours and its recovery point objective RPO as a maximum of 1 hour. Which of the following approaches best aligns with these requirements and regulatory expectations for a UCCE deployment? Option A. Implement an active standby UCCE deployment with a secondary site capable of taking over operations within the defined RTO and RPO, utilizing data replication mechanisms that support the RPO. Option B. Postpone the final DR strategy decision until a specific disaster event occurs to gather real-world data on recovery needs. Option C. Rely on daily backups of the UCCE database and configuration, with a plan to restore services at the primary site in the event of an outage. Option D. Deploy a full active-active UCCE solution across 3 geographically diverse data centers to ensure maximum uptime, irrespective of specific RTO/RPO metrics. The correct answer is A. Implement an active standby UCCE deployment with a secondary site capable of taking over operations within the defined RTO and RPO, utilizing data replication mechanisms that support the RPO. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in contact center design, balancing the need for robust disaster recovery and business continuity with the significant cost implications of implementing redundant infrastructure. The professional challenge lies in making a technically sound and cost-effective decision that aligns with the organization's risk tolerance and regulatory obligations, without over-engineering or under-provisioning critical services. The need for a clear understanding of RTO and RPO is paramount, as these metrics directly influence the complexity and cost of the solution. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough assessment of the organization's specific RTO and RPO requirements, coupled with an analysis of the available Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCE) disaster recovery options. This approach is best professional practice because it is data-driven and directly addresses the business's stated needs. By understanding the acceptable downtime and data loss, the design team can select the most appropriate and cost-effective DR strategy, such as active standby or active-active configurations, or even a less complex solution if the RTO/RPO allows. This aligns with the principles of efficient resource allocation and risk management, ensuring that the investment in DR is proportionate to the business impact of an outage. From a regulatory perspective, this ensures compliance with any mandates requiring specific levels of service availability and data protection, without incurring unnecessary expenditure. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a full active-active redundant solution across multiple geographically dispersed data centers without a clear understanding of the RTO/RPO is a regulatory and ethical failure. It represents a significant overinvestment that cannot be justified by business needs or regulatory requirements, leading to inefficient use of company resources. This approach fails to demonstrate due diligence in cost-benefit analysis. Choosing a basic backup and restore strategy without considering the RTO/RPO, especially for a critical contact center environment, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach risks failing to meet mandated service availability levels, potentially leading to substantial business disruption, financial penalties, and reputational damage. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of business continuity requirements and a failure to adequately protect customer service operations. Adopting a wait-and-see approach to DR implementation, delaying decisions until a specific need arises, is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. This reactive stance leaves the organization vulnerable to unforeseen events, potentially violating service-level agreements and regulatory compliance. It shows a lack of proactive risk management and a disregard for the potential impact of service disruptions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach DR design by first understanding the business's critical requirements, RTO/RPO. This understanding should then be mapped against the capabilities of the chosen technology UCCED and the available DR solutions. A cost-benefit analysis, considering both implementation and ongoing operational costs, is essential. Regulatory compliance should be a baseline requirement, ensuring that the chosen solution meets all applicable standards. The decision-making process should be iterative, involving stakeholders from IT, business operation, and compliance to ensure alignment and buy-in. Question 3. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of a data breach related to payment card information if sensitive customer data is not adequately protected during customer interactions within the Cisco Unified Contact Center enterprise environment. Considering the strict requirements of PCI DSS, which design approach best mitigates this risk while maintaining operational efficiency? Option A. Disable call recording entirely for all customer interactions to eliminate any potential for sensitive data exposure in recordings. Option B. Implement a secure agent desktop solution with integrated data masking for sensitive fields and role-based access control to customer data, ensuring call recordings are encrypted and only accessible to authorized personnel for specific business needs. Option C. Store all customer interaction recordings unencrypted and make them readily accessible to all contact center agents for ease of reference during calls. Option D. Rely on agents to verbally confirm and handle all payment card information without any technical controls or data masking within the agent desktop. The correct answer is B. Implement a secure agent desktop solution with integrated data masking for sensitive fields and role-based access control to customer data, ensuring call recordings are encrypted and only accessible to authorized personnel for specific business needs. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in contact center design, where the need for robust security and data privacy, particularly concerning personally identifiable information, PI, and payment card industry data security standard, PCI DSS, compliance, directly conflicts with the desire for efficient agent access to customer data for effective service delivery. The professional challenge lies in balancing these competing requirements without compromising regulatory adherence or customer experience. Careful judgment is required to select a solution that meets the stringent security mandates of PCI DSS, while enabling agents to perform their duties effectively. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a secure agent desktop solution that integrates with the Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCED) environment, specifically leveraging features like data masking and role-based access control (RBAC) for sensitive data, represents best professional practice. This approach directly addresses the PCI DSS requirement to protect cardholder data by minimizing its exposure to agents and systems that do not strictly require it. RBAC ensures that only authorized personnel can access specific data elements, aligning with the principle of least privilege, a fundamental tenet of data security and regulatory compliance. This method allows for a controlled and auditable flow of information, crucial for demonstrating compliance during audits. Incorrect approaches analysis. Selecting an approach that involves storing all customer interaction recordings unencrypted and accessible to all agents directly violates PCI DSS requirements. PCI DSS mandates the protection of cardholder data at rest and in transit, and unencrypted storage accessible to unauthorized personnel is a significant security and regulatory failure. This exposes sensitive financial information to a high risk of breach, leading to severe financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Opting for a solution that completely disables call recording for all interaction, even those not involving payment card information, is also professionally unacceptable. It might seem like a way to avoid PCI DSS complexities. It fails to meet potential business needs for quality assurance, training, and dispute resolution. Furthermore, it could indirectly violate other regulatory frameworks, depending on jurisdiction, though for this exam we focus on US and PCI DSS, that might mandate certain levels of interaction monitoring for compliance or service improvement. It also represents a failure to design a comprehensive and functional contact center solution. choosing a method that relies solely on agent self-regulation for handling sensitive payment information without any technical controls or data masking is a critical failure. This approach places undue reliance on human adherence to complex security protocols, which is inherently prone to error. It fails to implement the technical safeguards required by PCI DSS to prevent accidental or intentional disclosure of cardholder data, creating a significant compliance gap and increasing the risk of a data breach. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise solutions must adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing regulatory compliance, especially for standards like PCI DSS. The decision-making process should involve a thorough understanding of the data being handled, the applicable regulations, and the capabilities of the UCCED platform and its integrated components. The goal is to implement technical and procedural controls that minimize the risk of data compromise while enabling efficient business operations. This involves a layered security strategy, including access controls, data encryption, data masking, and secure recording mechanisms, all configured and managed within the UCCED framework. Question 4. Assessment of a proposed Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCED) solution design that includes extensive call recording, detailed agent screen capture, and comprehensive customer interaction logging for the stated purpose of improving agent training and quality assurance. The design also proposes the collection of additional customer demographic data, not directly related to the immediate service interaction, for future marketing analysis. Which design approach best aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation as typically understood within regulatory frameworks governing data privacy? Option A. Proceed with the proposed design, as the stated purposes of improving agent training and future marketing analysis are broad enough to encompass the intended data collection, and internal policies will govern data access. Option B. Focus the design on maximizing data capture for all interactions, assuming that advanced analytics tools can later identify relevant data points and that regulatory compliance can be addressed through contractual agreements with third-party data processors. Option C. Implement the design as proposed, relying on post-collection anonymization of demographic data for marketing analysis and ensuring that training data is only accessed by authorized personnel. Option D. Redesign the solution to collect only the data strictly necessary for immediate call resolution and agent performance evaluation during live interactions. Any further data collection for marketing or advanced analytics should be opt-in and require separate, explicit customer consent with clearly defined purposes. The correct answer is C. Implement the design as proposed, relying on post-collection anonymization of demographic data for marketing analysis and ensuring that training data is only accessed by authorized personnel. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in designing a contact center solution that balances advanced functionality with stringent data privacy regulations. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that the proposed solution, while meeting business objectives for customer interaction and data analysis, strictly adheres to the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation as mandated by relevant data protection laws. The need to provide personalized customer experiences often conflicts with the requirement to collect and process only the minimum data necessary for a specific, stated purpose. Professionals must navigate this tension by prioritizing compliance without unduly hindering operational efficiency or customer service quality. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a privacy-by-design methodology. This involves embedding data protection principles into the architecture and functionality of the contact center from the outset. Specifically, it means designing the system to collect only the data essential for the immediate defined purpose of the interaction, e.g., resolving a customer query. Any additional data collection for analytics or future personalization must be explicitly consented to by the customer or anonymized/aggregated to a degree that prevents individual identification. This aligns with the fundamental principles of data protection, such as data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that personal data is not processed beyond what is necessary for the stated purpose, and that the scope of processing is clearly defined and adhered to. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of regulatory noncompliance and builds customer trust. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves implementing a broad data collection strategy, assuming that more data will lead to better insights and customer experiences, without a clear, immediate, and specific purpose for each data point collected. This violates the principle of data minimization, as it suggests collecting data that may not be immediately required or relevant to the customer's interaction. It also risks violating the purpose limitation principle if the collected data is later used for purposes not originally disclosed or consented to. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on post-collection data anonymization or aggregation as a primary compliance strategy. These techniques can be part of a broader compliance framework. They are insufficient on their own. If the initial collection itself is excessive or lacks a defined purpose, the subsequent anonymization may not fully mitigate the risks, and the process of anonymization itself can be complex and prone to re-identification vulnerabilities. Furthermore, it fails to address the core principle of collecting only what is necessary from the start. A third incorrect approach is to defer data privacy considerations to a later stage, assuming that legal counsel or a dedicated compliance team will address them after the technical design is complete. This bolt-on approach is inherently risky. It often leads to costly redesigns, missed opportunities for efficient integration of privacy controls, and a higher likelihood of overlooking critical compliance requirements during the initial design phase. It demonstrates a lack of proactive engagement with data protection principles, which is a fundamental ethical and professional failing in designing systems that handle personal data. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing contact center solutions must adopt a proactive and principle-based approach to data privacy. The decision-making process should begin with a thorough understanding of the business objectives and the types of personal data that will be processed. This understanding must be immediately followed by an assessment of the relevant data protection regulations. The core of the decision-making process should involve applying the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation to every aspect of the design. This means questioning the necessity of collecting each piece of data and ensuring that its intended use is clearly defined and justifiable. When in doubt, the default should be to avoid collecting the data or to seek explicit, informed consent. Regular consultation with legal and compliance experts throughout the design lifecycle is crucial to ensure that the solution remains compliant and ethically sound. Question 5. Comparative studies suggest that while single-site deployments with internal redundancy offer a baseline level of resilience, the true measure of a contact center's robustness against widespread disruptions lies in its architectural design for failover. Considering the critical nature of customer interactions and the implicit need for continuous service availability, which of the following UCCED deployment strategies best addresses the requirements for comprehensive disaster recovery and business continuity? Option A. A single-site UCCED deployment with redundant hardware components, e.g., dual power supplies, redundant network interfaces, and robust internal server clustering. Option B. A multi-site UCCED deployment utilizing an active-active or active-passive configuration to ensure seamless failover and continued operation in the event of a primary site failure. Option C. A single-site UCCED deployment with a cloud-based backup solution for UCCED data, but no specific failover infrastructure for the application. Option D. A single-site UCCED deployment with a comprehensive daily backup and restore procedure for all UCCED configurations and data. Correct answer is B. A multi-site UCCED deployment utilizing an active-active or active-passive configuration to ensure seamless failover and continued operation in the event of a primary site failure. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in contact center design, balancing the need for robust disaster recovery and business continuity with the financial constraints and operational complexities of implementing such solutions. The core challenge lies in identifying the most effective and compliant strategy for ensuring service availability during disruptive events, particularly when faced with differing interpretations of regulatory requirements and the potential for significant investment. The need to adhere strictly to the 500-440 Designing Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCED) exam's implied regulatory framework, which, for the purpose of this exam, we will assume aligns with general principles of data protection and service continuity, often found in U.S.-centric regulations like those from the FCC or NIST. Without explicitly naming them, as the exam is focused on design principles, adds a layer of complexity. The design must not only be technically sound, but also demonstrably meet the spirit and letter of any applicable service continuity mandates. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multi-site, active-active or active-passive deployment strategy for the Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCE) solution. This aligns with best practices for business continuity and disaster recovery. An active-active setup allows for load balancing across multiple sites, ensuring that if one site experiences an outage, the other can seamlessly take over the full workload. An active-passive setup, while potentially less complex or costly, still provides a failover mechanism. This approach directly addresses the implicit regulatory requirement for service continuity by minimizing downtime and ensuring that customer interactions can continue with minimal disruption. It demonstrates a proactive stance towards risk management and resilience, which is a cornerstone of professional contact center design, especially when dealing with critical customer services. This strategy ensures that the core components of the UCCE solution, including CTI servers, media resources, and agent desktops, are replicated or available at a secondary location, thereby meeting the implicit need to maintain operational integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on a single site deployment with robust internal redundancy, e.g., redundant servers, power supplies, is insufficient. While this mitigates hardware failures within a single location, it offers no protection against site-wide disasters such as natural calamities, power grid failures affecting an entire region, or significant network outages impacting the primary data center. This approach fails to meet the implicit regulatory expectation for resilience against broader disruptive events, leaving the organization vulnerable to prolonged service interruption. Implementing a basic backup and restore procedure for UCCE configurations and data without a corresponding failover infrastructure is also inadequate. While essential for data recovery, this method involves significant downtime during the restoration process, which is unacceptable for a critical customer service platform. The time required to provision new hardware or restore services at a secondary site would likely exceed acceptable service level agreements and regulatory tolerance for downtime. Focusing exclusively on cloud-based backup solutions for UCCE data without a defined disaster recovery plan that includes failover of the UCCE application and its associated infrastructure is a critical oversight. While cloud backups are valuable for data integrity, they do not inherently provide the application-level failover necessary to maintain real-time contact center operations during an outage. The design must ensure that the entire UCCE environment, not just the data, can be brought online at a secondary location. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing contact center solutions must adopt a risk-based approach. This involves identifying potential threats to service continuity, assessing their likelihood and impact, and designing solutions that mitigate these risks to an acceptable level. The decision-making process should prioritize strategies that ensure minimal disruption to customer service, aligning with both business objectives and implicit regulatory expectations for service availability and data protection. A thorough understanding of the UCCE architecture and its high availability features is crucial, alongside a comprehensive disaster recovery and business continuity plan that has been tested and validated. This proactive and resilient design philosophy is the hallmark of professional contact center engineering. Question 6. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of regulatory noncompliance if sensitive customer data captured during call recordings and transcriptions is not adequately protected. Considering the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, as the primary regulatory framework for customer interactions within the European Economic Area, which design approach for call recording and transcription best mitigates these risks. Option A. Store all call recordings and transcripts indefinitely to ensure comprehensive data availability for any future audit or investigation, without specific anonymization measures. Option B. Configure call recording and transcription to capture only essential data points required for specific documented purposes, with robust access controls and encryption for stored data, and implement a defined data retention policy. Option C. Enable call recording and transcription by default for all calls, with an option for customers to opt out if they are aware of and concerned about the data being captured. Option D. Implement full call recording and transcription for all interactions, relying on initial customer consent to cover all data processing activities. The correct answer is D. Implement full call recording and transcription for all interactions, relying on initial customer consent to cover all data processing activities. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in designing a contact center solution that balances the need for efficient customer service with strict adherence to data privacy regulations, specifically the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, as it applies to customer interactions within the European Economic Area, EEA. The core tension lies in the potential for sensitive personal data to be inadvertently exposed or mishandled during the call recording and transcription process, which is a common feature in contact center operations. The risk matrix highlights the potential for significant reputational damage and financial penalties if these regulations are not meticulously observed. Careful judgment is required to select a solution that not only meets functional requirements, but also embeds privacy by design principles. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a solution that prioritizes data minimization and security from the outset. This means configuring call recording and transcription features to only capture and process data that is strictly necessary for the stated purpose, e.g., quality assurance, training, dispute resolution. Furthermore, it necessitates robust access controls and encryption for stored recordings and transcripts, ensuring that only authorized personnel can access this sensitive information. The use of anonymization or pseudonymization techniques, where feasible, further strengthens compliance. This approach aligns with GDPR principles of data protection by design and by default, ensuring that privacy is a fundamental consideration throughout the system's lifecycle. It demonstrates a commitment to lawful and fair processing of personal data, minimizing the risk of breaches and fostering customer trust. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to enable full call recording and transcription for all interactions without any granular controls or consideration for data minimization. This directly violates GDPR principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, as it captures more data than is strictly necessary and potentially for undefined purposes. This increases the risk of unauthorized access and misuse of personal data, leading to potential breaches and significant fines. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the assumption that customer consent, if obtained at the beginning of the call, absolves the organization of further responsibility for data protection. While consent is a lawful basis for processing, it does not negate the need for robust security measures and data minimization. GDPR requires organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal data, regardless of consent. Failing to do so, even with consent, can still result in regulatory noncompliance. A third incorrect approach would be to store all call recordings and transcripts indefinitely without a defined retention policy. GDPR mandates that personal data should be kept in a form which permits identification of data subjects for no longer than is necessary for the purposes for which the personal data are processed. Indefinite storage increases the attack surface for data breaches and the potential for data to be used for purposes beyond its original collection, contravening the principle of storage limitation. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing contact center solutions must adopt a risk-based approach, integrating regulatory compliance into the core design. This involves understanding the specific data protection obligations relevant to the target customer base, in this case, GDPR for EEA customers. The decision-making process should start with identifying all personal data that will be processed, assessing the risks associated with its collection, storage, and processing, and then selecting technical and organizational measures that mitigate these risks effectively. Prioritizing privacy by design, implementing granular controls, establishing clear data retention policies, and ensuring robust security measures are paramount. Regular review and auditing of the implemented solutions against evolving regulatory requirements are also critical components of professional practice. Question 7. To address the challenge of designing a Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCE) solution for a large U.S.-based healthcare provider that handles sensitive patient-protected health information, (PHI), which design strategy best ensures compliance with U.S. federal regulations such as HIPAA and HITECH, while also enabling efficient patient interaction? Option A. Prioritize the implementation of advanced omnichannel routing and AI-powered chatbots to enhance customer experience, with security measures to be addressed in a subsequent phase. Option B. Implement end-to-end encryption for all data in transit and at rest, enforce role-based access controls on agent desktops to limit PHI exposure, and configure comprehensive audit logging for all PHI access and modifications. Option C. Deploy UCCED with standard security settings and rely on network-level firewalls to protect PHI, assuming that most patient data is handled by separate, secure systems. Option D. Utilize third-party security solutions for encryption and access control, assuming these solutions are inherently HIPAA compliant without further verification. The correct answer is B. Implement end-to-end encryption for all data in transit and at rest. Enforce role-based access controls on agent desktops to limit PHI exposure, and configure comprehensive audit logging for all PHI access and modifications. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in designing a contact center solution that balances advanced functionality with the stringent requirements of data privacy and security, specifically within the context of U.S. federal regulations governing protected health information. 5. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that the chosen Unified Contact Center Enterprise, UCCED, design not only meets performance and user experience goals, but also adheres strictly to HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and HITECH, Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act, mandates. Failure to do so can result in severe legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of patient trust. The need for robust encryption, access controls, and audit trails for PHI is paramount, requiring a design that is both technically sound and legally compliant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a design that prioritizes HIPAA compliance from the outset. This involves implementing end-to-end encryption for all data in transit and at rest, particularly for any PHI that may be handled or stored within the UCCED environment. Secure agent desktops with role-based access control, ensuring agents only see the minimum necessary PHI to perform their duties, are critical. Furthermore, comprehensive logging and auditing capabilities are essential to track access and modifications to PHI, enabling compliance with high-tech breach notification rules and facilitating regular security audits. This approach aligns with the core principles of HIPAA security rule, which mandates administrative, physical, and technical safeguards to protect electronic PHI. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to focus solely on advanced features like intelligent routing and omnichannel integration, without adequately addressing PHI security. This overlooks the fundamental legal obligation to protect sensitive patient data, violating HIPAA security rule by failing to implement necessary technical safeguards. Another incorrect approach might involve implementing basic security measures, but neglecting the specific requirements for encryption of PHI at rest, which is a direct contravention of high-tech mandates for data protection. A third incorrect approach could be to rely on third-party applications for security without thoroughly vetting their HIPAA compliance, potentially exposing the organization to risks if these applications do not meet the required standards. Such a failure would represent a breach of due diligence and a violation of the organization's responsibility to safeguard PHI. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing contact center solutions, especially in regulated industries like healthcare, must adopt a risk-based approach. This involves identifying all potential threats to sensitive data, understanding the relevant legal and regulatory frameworks, in this case, U.S. HIPAA and HITECH, and designing solutions that proactively mitigate these risks. A thorough understanding of the UCCED capabilities in relation to security features, encryption standards, and auditing mechanisms is crucial. The decision-making process should prioritize compliance and security as foundational elements, integrating them into every design decision rather than treating them as an afterthought. Regular consultation with legal and compliance experts is also a vital part of this process. Question 8. The audit findings indicate that the current call recording strategy may not adequately protect sensitive customer personally identifiable information, PI, as required by relevant data protection guidelines. Which design approach for call recording within Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise best addresses this concern proactively? Option A. Store all call recordings in their entirety and implement a process to purge sensitive PII only when a customer explicitly requests it. Option B. Implement a solution that automatically redacts or omits sensitive PII from call recordings based on predefined triggers or agent-initiated actions during the call. Option C. Utilize a third-party application to perform post-recording analysis and redaction of sensitive PII, with minimal integration into the core contact center platform. Option D. Rely on agents to manually identify and flag sensitive PII within call recordings for subsequent redaction by a separate administrative process. The correct answer is B. Implement a solution that automatically redacts or omits sensitive PII from call recordings based on predefined triggers or agent-initiated actions during the call. Explanation: the audit findings indicate a potential gap in the contact center's adherence to data privacy regulations concerning the handling of sensitive customer information during call recordings. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational efficiency with stringent legal and ethical obligations to protect customer data. The design of the contact center solution must proactively incorporate mechanisms to comply with these regulations, rather than relying on post hoc measures. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the regulatory requirement for data minimization and consent management by implementing a design that automatically redacts or omits sensitive personal identifiable information, PI, from call recordings based on predefined triggers or agent actions. The solution minimizes the risk of unauthorized access or misuse of sensitive data. This proactive design aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, which are fundamental to regulations like GDPR, assuming a relevant jurisdiction for the exam, though the prompt restricts to exam-specific context, implying a focus on general principles applicable to such certifications. This approach ensures that the contact center operates within legal boundaries, builds customer trust, and avoids significant penalties associated with data breaches or noncompliance. An incorrect approach that relies solely on agent discretion for identifying and flagging sensitive data for redaction is professionally unacceptable. This introduces a significant risk of human error, inconsistency, and potential noncompliance. Agents may overlook sensitive information, intentionally or unintentionally, leading to the recording of PII that should have been protected. This failure directly contravenes the principle of robust data protection and could result in regulatory violations, fines, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that involves storing all call recordings without any form of PII redaction or anonymization, and then attempting to purge sensitive data upon request, is also professionally flawed. This method creates a large repository of sensitive data, increasing the attack surface and the potential impact of a security incident. Furthermore, it places an undue burden on the organization to accurately identify and remove PII from all historical recordings when a request is made, which is often technically challenging and prone to errors. This reactive approach is less effective and more risky than a proactive, design-level solution. Third incorrect approach that involves relying on third-party tools for post-recording analysis and redaction without integrating these capabilities into the core contact center design is also problematic. While third-party tools can be useful, relying on them as the primary mechanism for compliance introduces dependencies and potential delays. If the integration is not seamless, or if the tools fail, the contact center's compliance posture is compromised. A well-designed solution embeds these critical functions within the contact center infrastructure itself, ensuring consistent and reliable application of data protection policies. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and data security from the initial design phase. This involves understanding the specific data privacy requirements applicable to the contact center's operation, identifying sensitive data types, and architecting solutions that inherently protect this data. The process should include risk assessment, the selection of appropriate technologies and configurations, and ongoing monitoring and auditing to ensure continued adherence to regulations. Question 9. Compliance review shows that the contact center is considering implementing a new intelligent routing system that leverages historical customer interaction data to predict and route customers to agents best suited to handle their specific needs. The system aims to improve first call resolution and customer satisfaction. However, the review also highlights potential risks related to the collection, storage, and use of customer personal data for this predictive routing. Which of the following design approaches best balances the benefits of intelligent routing with the stringent requirements of data privacy regulations? Option A. Implement the intelligent routing system using all available historical customer interaction data, including sensitive personal details, to maximize the accuracy of predictive routing. Rely on the existing general terms of service to cover the use of this data for service improvement. Option B. Design the intelligent routing system to utilize anonymized or pseudonymized historical customer interaction data for training and prediction, ensuring that no personally identifiable information is directly used in the routing decisions. Implement clear opt-in mechanisms for customers who wish to have their data contribute to improving the overall service, with granular control over the types of data used. Option C. Deploy the intelligent routing system with a focus solely on technical performance metrics, assuming that compliance with data privacy regulations will be addressed through post-implementation audits and adjustments as needed. Option D. Design the intelligent routing system to infer customer preferences and needs based on broad demographic categories and publicly available information, without directly accessing or storing specific historical interaction data. The correct answer is B. Design the intelligent routing system to utilize anonymized or pseudonymized historical customer interaction data for training and prediction, ensuring that no personally identifiable information is directly used in the routing decisions. Implement clear opt-in mechanisms for customers who wish to have their data contribute to improving the overall service, with granular control over the types of data used. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between optimizing customer experience through advanced routing and adhering to strict data privacy regulations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the desire for personalized service, which often relies on collecting and analyzing customer data, with the legal and ethical obligations to protect that data. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed solution not only meets business objectives, but also demonstrably complies with the specified regulatory framework. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a privacy-by-design methodology. By incorporating data minimization principles and ensuring robust security measures are in place before implementing advanced routing strategies, it proactively addresses potential compliance risks. This aligns with the spirit and letter of data protection regulations, which mandate that privacy considerations are integrated into the design of systems and processes. Specifically, it demonstrates a commitment to lawful and fair processing of personal data, transparency with customers about data usage, and the implementation of appropriate technical and organizational measures to safeguard data. An incorrect approach that relies on extensive historical customer data for routing without explicit consent or a clear legal basis for processing fails to uphold the principle of lawful processing. This could lead to violations of data protection laws by processing data without a legitimate purpose or consent, and potentially breaches of data minimization principles if more data is collected than is strictly necessary. Another incorrect approach that implements advanced routing based on inferred customer preferences without clear opt-in mechanisms or transparency about the data used for inference risks, violating transparency and consent requirements. Customers have a right to know how their data is being used and to control its use. A third incorrect approach that overlooks the need for data anonymization or pseudonymization when using historical data for training routing algorithms exposes the organization to significant risks of data breaches and non-compliance with data security obligations. The failure to adequately protect personal data, even if used for a seemingly beneficial purpose, is a direct regulatory and ethical failure. Professional decision-making in such situations should follow a framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory requirements. This involves identifying all relevant data protection laws and guidelines. Next, assess the business objectives and the proposed technical solutions, evaluating them against the identified regulatory obligations. Prioritize solutions that inherently incorporate privacy controls and data minimization. If a proposed solution requires processing personal data, ensure there is a clear legal basis for that processing and that appropriate consent mechanisms are in place. Conduct a data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate risks. Finally, Document all decisions and justifications to demonstrate due diligence and compliance. Question 10. Quality control measures reveal that the proposed Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise, UCCE, designed for a financial services organization in the European Union, includes extensive logging of customer interactions, capturing detailed personal information in call detail records, CDR, and agent desktop screens for all inbound and outbound calls. The primary business objective is to enhance agent performance monitoring and provide comprehensive historical data for dispute resolution. Considering the strict requirements of the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, which of the following design approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional best practices for this scenario? Option A. Configure UCCE to log only essential data points required for call routing and dispute resolution, anonymizing or pseudonymizing sensitive personal information where possible, and implementing strict access controls and data retention policies aligned with GDPR principles. Option B. Implement the UCCE solution with default logging settings to capture all available interaction data, relying on the assumption that comprehensive data collection is necessary for robust performance monitoring and dispute resolution, and that GDPR compliance will be addressed through separate data governance policies. Option C. Enable all available logging features within UCCE, including voice recording and screen capture for all interactions, and instruct agents to verbally confirm consent for data processing at the beginning of each call, without specific technical configurations to limit data scope or retention. Option D. Design the UCCE system to prompt agents to manually collect and record detailed personal and financial information from every customer interaction, regardless of its immediate necessity, to ensure a complete historical record for potential future analysis. The correct answer is A. Configure UCCE to log only essential data points required for call routing and dispute resolution, anonymizing or pseudonymizing sensitive personal information where possible, and implementing strict access controls and data retention policies aligned with GDPR principles. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in contact center design, balancing the need for efficient call routing with the imperative to comply with data privacy regulations. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, to the specific technical implementation of call handling, particularly concerning the storage and processing of personal data within the Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise, UCCE, environment. Misinterpreting or overlooking these regulations can lead to significant legal penalties and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen routing strategy not only meets business objectives, but also upholds the fundamental rights of data subjects as mandated by GDPR. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves designing the UCCE solution to minimize the collection and retention of personal data during call routing and handling, and to ensure that any data processed is done so lawfully, fairly, and transparently. This aligns with the GDPR principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and accountability. Specifically, it means avoiding unnecessary logging of sensitive personal information in call detail records, CDR, or agent desktops, and implementing robust access controls and data retention policies that are compliant with GDPR requirements for lawful processing and storage. The use of anonymization or pseudonymization techniques where feasible further strengthens compliance. This approach represents best professional practice because it proactively embeds privacy by design and by default, a core tenet of GDPR, ensuring that the contact center operates within legal boundaries and respects customer privacy rights. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to prioritize agent efficiency and call handling speed above all else, leading to the indiscriminate logging of all customer interaction, including sensitive personal data, without a clear legal basis or defined retention period. This violates GDPR principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, as data is collected and stored beyond what is necessary for the stated purpose of call handling. It also fails to adequately protect the rights of data subjects, potentially exposing them to unauthorized access or misuse of their information. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a routing strategy that requires agents to manually collect and record extensive personal details from callers for every interaction, even when not strictly necessary for service delivery. This increases the risk of data breaches and noncompliance with GDPR requirements for lawful processing and security. It also places an undue burden on customers and agents, undermining the overall customer experience and operational efficiency. A third incorrect approach would be to assume that standard UX logging features are inherently GDPR compliant without specific configuration or review. This set it and forget it mentality ignores the need for a tailored approach to data protection. GDPR mandates a proactive and demonstrable approach to compliance, requiring organizations to actively configure systems and processes to meet its standards, rather than relying on default settings. This failure to actively configure for privacy can lead to unintentional data breaches and noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing UX solutions must adopt a risk-based approach, integrating data protection considerations from the outset. This involves understanding the types of personal data that will be processed, the purposes for processing, and the legal basis for doing so under GDPR. A thorough data protection impact assessment (DPIA) should be conducted to identify and mitigate privacy risks. The design should prioritize minimizing data collection, implementing appropriate security measures, encryption, access controls, defining clear data retention periods, and ensuring mechanisms for data subject rights, access, erasure. Regular audits and reviews of the UX configuration and operational procedures are essential to maintain ongoing compliance. Question 11. Consider a scenario where a contact center is exploring the implementation of an AI-powered sentiment analysis tool to proactively identify customers who are experiencing distress during interactions, with the goal of improving customer satisfaction and agent efficiency. The organization operates under U.S. regulations. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices and regulatory compliance for implementing this AI solution? Option A. Integrate the AI sentiment analysis tool directly into the IVR system, allowing it to assess customer sentiment before connecting them to an agent, thereby routing them to specialized support if distress is detected. Option B. Obtain explicit, informed consent from customers before any AI sentiment analysis is performed on their interactions, clearly explaining the purpose of the analysis and providing an option to opt out of this specific analysis. Option C. Deploy the AI sentiment analysis tool, ensuring that all data processed is anonymized before analysis, and then use the insights to train agents on handling difficult conversations more effectively. Option D. Implement the AI sentiment analysis tool and begin analyzing customer interactions in real time to identify distressed customers, providing agents with alerts. Customer consent will be sought for future interactions if the tool proves effective. The correct answer is D. Implement the AI sentiment analysis tool and begin analyzing customer interactions in real time to identify distressed customers, providing agents with alerts. Customer consent will be sought for future interactions if the tool proves effective. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for enhanced customer service with the long-term implications of data privacy and compliance. The core of the challenge lies in understanding the nuances of customer consent and data handling within the context of a contact center environment, particularly when leveraging advanced technologies like AI-powered sentiment analysis. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any solution implemented not only meets business objectives, but also adheres strictly to the specified regulatory framework. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes obtaining explicit, informed consent from customers before employing AI for sentiment analysis. This aligns with the principles of data protection and privacy, ensuring that individuals are aware of how their data is being processed and have control over it. By clearly communicating the purpose of the AI analysis and providing an opt-out mechanism, the organization demonstrates a commitment to transparency and customer trust, which are foundational ethical and regulatory requirements. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of non-compliance and potential reputational damage. An incorrect approach that involves deploying AI sentiment analysis without explicit customer consent, even if anonymized, poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. Such an action could violate data privacy regulations that mandate consent for processing personal data, even if the intent is to improve service. The anonymization process itself might not be robust enough to guarantee complete de-identification, leading to potential breaches of privacy. Furthermore, it erodes customer trust by engaging in data processing activities without their knowledge or agreement, which is ethically unsound and can lead to severe penalties under data protection laws. Another incorrect approach, which is to rely solely on the AI's ability to detect distress without any human oversight or customer notification, is also professionally unacceptable. While AI can be a powerful tool, it is not infallible. Errors in sentiment detection could lead to misinterpretations, potentially causing distress to customers if their perceived negative sentiment is acted upon inappropriately or if the system fails to recognize genuine distress. This approach neglects the ethical responsibility to ensure accuracy and the potential for AI to misinterpret complex human emotions, leading to poor customer outcomes and potential regulatory scrutiny for inadequate service or data handling. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment that considers both business benefits and compliance implications. This includes understanding the specific data protection laws applicable to the operating jurisdiction, identifying all data processing activities, and evaluating the necessity and proportionality of each activity. Before implementing any new technology, especially one involving data analysis, a comprehensive privacy impact assessment should be conducted. Furthermore, clear communication protocols with customers regarding data usage and robust consent management mechanisms are paramount. When in doubt, consulting with legal and compliance experts is a critical step in ensuring that all decisions are ethically sound and legally compliant. Question 12. The investigation demonstrates that a new contact center deployment for a financial services organization is experiencing an unusual number of data access anomalies, raising concerns about the security of sensitive customer financial information. The design team is reviewing the initial implementation to identify potential weaknesses. Which of the following design considerations best addresses the regulatory requirement for reasonable security measures to protect customer data in this scenario? Option A. Implementing end-to-end encryption for all voice and data traffic, coupled with granular role-based access controls for agents and supervisors, and encrypting sensitive data at rest within the contact center database. Option B. Relying solely on the existing perimeter firewall to prevent unauthorized access to the contact center network. Option C. Assuming that all customer interactions are inherently secure due to the use of standard communication protocols. Option D. Prioritizing cost reduction by minimizing the implementation of advanced security features, such as data encryption, to keep the project within budget. Correct answer is A. Implementing end-to-end encryption for all voice and data traffic, coupled with granular role-based access controls for agents and supervisors, and encrypting sensitive data at rest within the contact center database. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in contact center design, balancing the need for efficient call routing with the ethical and regulatory imperative to protect sensitive customer data. The professional challenge lies in interpreting vague regulatory guidance and applying it to a specific technical design, ensuring compliance without compromising operational effectiveness. The requirement for reasonable security measures is subjective and necessitates a deep understanding of both the technology and the potential risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a layered security strategy that addresses data protection at multiple points within the contact center infrastructure. This aligns with best practices for data privacy and security, which are often implicitly or explicitly mandated by regulations like GDPR, if the jurisdiction were EU, or HIPAA, if the jurisdiction were US healthcare. In the context of the UCCED exam, which focuses on Cisco's solutions, this translates to leveraging built-in security features of Cisco Unified Communications Manager, CUCM, and Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise, UCS, for encryption, access control, and secure data handling. Specifically, implementing transport layer security (TLS) for signaling and media, encrypting sensitive data at rest e.g., call recordings, customer databases, and enforcing granular role-based access control (RBAC) for agents and supervisors are critical. This proactive and comprehensive approach demonstrates due diligence in protecting customer information, which is a cornerstone of professional responsibility in IT design. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to solely rely on network-level firewalls to protect sensitive data. This fails to address vulnerabilities within the application layer or at the endpoints where data is processed. Regulatory frameworks typically require security measures that are commensurate with the sensitivity of the data, and a firewall alone is often insufficient to prevent unauthorized access to or disclosure of personally identifiable information, PI, or protected health information. 5. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that all customer interactions are inherently secure without specific technical controls. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of potential threats and a failure to implement proactive security measures, which could lead to data breaches and significant regulatory penalties. Finally, an approach that prioritizes cost savings over robust security by omitting encryption or advanced access controls would be professionally unsound and likely violate regulatory requirements for data protection. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing contact center solutions must adopt a risk-based approach. This involves identifying sensitive data, understanding potential threats and vulnerabilities, and implementing security controls that mitigate those risks to an acceptable level. The decision-making process should involve consulting relevant regulatory guidance, industry best practices, and the security capabilities of the chosen technology stack. A thorough risk assessment, followed by the design and implementation of layered security measures, is essential for ensuring both compliance and the protection of customer trust. Question 13. Upon reviewing the requirements for a new Cisco Unified Contact Center enterprise deployment, the design team has identified a critical need for business continuity and disaster recovery. The organization operates in a highly regulated U.S. industry where continuous customer service availability is paramount. The primary concern is ensuring that, in the event of a major outage at the primary data center, customer interactions can be seamlessly handled with minimal disruption. The design must consider the implications of potential failures and the need to maintain service levels as defined by industry standards and regulatory expectations. Which of the following design approaches best addresses the business continuity and disaster recovery requirements for this critical contact center environment? Option A. Utilize cloud-based backup services for all contact center data and configurations, with the expectation that services can be rapidly provisioned in the cloud if the primary data center experiences an outage. Option B. Establish a geographically dispersed disaster recovery site with redundant, active-active or active-passive configurations for all critical contact center components, coupled with a rigorous testing and validation schedule. Option C. Implement a single-site disaster recovery solution where critical data is backed up nightly to an off-site location, with a plan to manually restore services at a secondary facility if the primary site becomes unavailable. Option D. Focus solely on network redundancy within the primary data center, assuming that any site-wide failure is an infrequent event and can be managed through manual intervention and communication. The correct answer is B. Establish a geographically dispersed disaster recovery site with redundant, active-active or active-passive configurations for all critical contact center components, coupled with a rigorous testing and validation schedule. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in contact center design, balancing the need for robust disaster recovery and business continuity with the practical constraints of budget and implementation complexity. The professional challenge lies in interpreting regulatory requirements, which are often performance-based rather than prescriptive, and translating them into a technically sound and cost-effective solution. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential impact of a failure to meet these requirements on customer service, regulatory compliance, and the organization's reputation. The specific regulatory framework for this exam, 500-440 Designing Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise, UCCED, implies a focus on U.S. regulations, particularly those pertaining to telecommunications and customer service continuity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves designing a solution that leverages geographically dispersed data centers with active-active or active-passive configuration for critical contact center components. This ensures that if one site experiences an outage, the other can seamlessly take over, minimizing downtime and maintaining service availability. This aligns with the spirit of U.S. regulatory frameworks that emphasize service continuity and customer protection, even if not explicitly detailing specific DR architectures. The focus on testing and validation is paramount, as a DR plan is only effective if it is proven to work under simulated failure conditions. This demonstrates due diligence and adherence to best practices in IT service management and risk mitigation. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a single-site disaster recovery solution with backups stored off-site fails to meet the stringent uptime requirements typically expected of critical customer service operations. While it offers some level of data protection, it does not guarantee immediate service restoration in the event of a site-wide disaster, leading to significant customer impact and potential regulatory scrutiny for service disruption. Relying solely on cloud-based backup services without a comprehensive failover strategy for the core contact center infrastructure also falls short. While cloud backups are valuable, they do not inherently provide the low latency, high availability required for real-time customer interactions during a disaster. This approach prioritizes data recovery over service continuity. Neglecting to establish a documented and regularly tested disaster recovery plan is a critical failure. This demonstrates a lack of preparedness and a disregard for potential business disruptions, which can have severe regulatory and financial consequences. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a risk-based approach to contact center design, prioritizing business continuity and regulatory compliance. This involves understanding the criticality of different components, assessing potential threats, and designing solutions that mitigate those risks effectively. A thorough understanding of relevant U.S. regulations, such as those from the FCC or state-level PUCs concerning service availability, is crucial. The decision-making process should involve a collaborative effort between engineering, operations, and compliance teams to ensure that the chosen design meets both technical and regulatory objectives. Regular testing and validation of DR plans are non-negotiable aspects of professional responsibility. Question 14. Market research demonstrates a growing customer preference for personalized marketing communications and the ability to review past interactions. A company operating within the United States is designing a new Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise UCCE solution. The design must accommodate these customer preferences while strictly adhering to U.S. federal and state data privacy laws, including the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, as amended by the California Privacy Rights Act, CPRA. The company intends to record all customer interactions for quality assurance and training purposes, and to use aggregated customer data for targeted marketing campaigns. Which design approach best balances customer experience enhancement with regulatory compliance? Option A. Enable call recording by default for all interactions and utilize all collected customer data for marketing purposes, assuming that the general terms of service provided at the outset of the customer relationship cover all data usage. Option B. Design the UCCE solution to collect as much customer data as possible to maximize personalization opportunities, with a single, broad consent checkbox during initial account setup that covers all future data processing activities. Option C. Focus solely on the technical capabilities for data collection and personalization, deferring detailed privacy policy development and consent management to a later stage once the system is operational. Option D. Implement a system that allows customers to explicitly consent to call recording and the use of their data for marketing, with clear, easily accessible privacy notices detailing data collection, usage, and retention policies. The system should also provide mechanisms for customers to request access to, correction of, or deletion of their personal data. The correct answer is D. Implement a system that allows customers to explicitly consent to call recording and the use of their data for marketing, with clear, easily accessible privacy notices detailing data collection, usage, and retention policies. The system should also provide mechanisms for customers to request access to, correction of, or deletion of their personal data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in designing a contact center solution that balances customer experience with regulatory compliance. The core difficulty lies in interpreting and applying the specific data privacy regulations relevant to the contact center's operational jurisdiction. Misinterpreting these regulations can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and a loss of customer trust. The need to ensure data security, consent management, and appropriate data handling across various communication channels requires a nuanced understanding of the legal framework. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a design that explicitly incorporates mechanisms for obtaining and managing customer consent for data processing, particularly for marketing communications and call recording. This aligns with the principles of data protection regulations that emphasize transparency and user control over personal information. Implementing granular consent options, providing clear privacy notices, and ensuring secure storage and access controls for recorded calls are essential to demonstrate compliance and build customer trust. This proactive approach mitigates legal risks and fosters a positive customer relationship by respecting their data privacy rights. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves assuming that general data protection principles are sufficient without specific verification against the applicable regulations. This can lead to overlooking critical requirements, such as specific consent mechanisms for certain types of data or communication channels, resulting in noncompliance. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize feature deployment over regulatory adherence, such as enabling call recording by default, without a clear and easily accessible opt-out mechanism or explicit consent. This directly violates regulations that mandate informed consent for data collection and processing, exposing the organization to penalties. A further incorrect approach is to implement a one-size-fits-all consent model that does not account for the varying levels of sensitivity of different data types or the specific purposes for which data is processed. This can lead to overcollection of data or processing data without adequate legal basis, again risking regulatory breaches. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing contact center solutions must adopt a risk-based approach, starting with a thorough understanding of the relevant regulatory landscape. This involves consulting legal counsel and compliance experts to interpret specific requirements. The design process should then integrate compliance controls from the outset, rather than attempting to retrofit them later. Prioritizing customer privacy and data security as core design principles, alongside functionality and scalability, ensures a robust and compliant solution. Regular review and updates to the design based on evolving regulations and best practices are also crucial. Question 15. Examination of the data shows that the proposed design for the Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise Solution includes a requirement for agents to access customer interaction logs for troubleshooting. These logs may contain sensitive personal information, including but not limited to partial payment card details and personal identifiers. The design team needs to determine the most appropriate method for managing access to these logs to ensure both effective troubleshooting and compliance with data privacy regulations. Option A. Implement role-based access control RBAC that granularly defines which agents can access specific types of sensitive data within the logs, ensuring that access is granted only when necessary for their role and the specific troubleshooting task. Option B. Rely on agents to self-report their access to sensitive data within the logs and to adhere to company policies without any technical enforcement mechanisms. Option C. Grant all agents full, unrestricted access to all customer interaction logs to facilitate immediate and comprehensive troubleshooting without any delays. Option D. Disable the logging of any sensitive customer information within the interaction logs to eliminate the risk of exposure, even if it hinders detailed troubleshooting. Correct answer is A. Implement role-based access control RBAC that granularly defines which agents can access specific types of sensitive data within the logs, ensuring that access is granted only when necessary for their role and the specific troubleshooting task. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in contact center design, balancing the need for robust security and data privacy with the operational requirement for efficient troubleshooting and agent support. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the specified regulatory framework, which for this exam is assumed to be US-based, focusing on data privacy regulations like HIPAA and PCI DSS, and general business ethics, to a technical design decision. The design must not only meet functional requirements, but also adhere to legal and ethical obligations concerning sensitive customer information. Failure to do so can result in significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes data minimization and access control, aligning with the principles of data privacy regulations by implementing role-based access control (RBAC) and ensuring that only authorized personnel can access specific types of sensitive data, like full credit card numbers or protected health information (PHI). During troubleshooting, the design adheres to the least privilege principle. This is a cornerstone of data security and privacy compliance. It ensures that even during necessary support activities, the exposure of sensitive data is strictly limited to what is absolutely required, thereby minimizing the risk of breaches and unauthorized disclosure. This approach is professionally sound because it proactively mitigates risks and demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance and customer data protection. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves granting broad access to all troubleshooting tools and data for all support personnel. This fails to comply with data privacy regulations that mandate the protection of sensitive information. For example, under HIPAA, unauthorized access to PHI is a violation. Similarly, PCI DSS strictly governs the handling of cardholder data. Such an approach creates a significant security vulnerability and ethical lapse by exposing sensitive data unnecessarily. Another incorrect approach might be to disable all advanced troubleshooting capabilities that could potentially expose sensitive data, even when anonymized or masked. While this might seem like a secure option, it severely hampers the ability of the support team to effectively diagnose and resolve complex customer issues. This can lead to prolonged downtime, customer dissatisfaction, and ultimately, a failure to meet service-level agreements, SLAs, which can have business and potentially regulatory implications if service failures are tied to data handling issues. It also represents poor professional judgment by sacrificing essential functionality for an overly cautious and ultimately detrimental security posture. A third incorrect approach could be to rely solely on agent self-reporting of data access without any technical controls. This is ethically and regulatorily unsound. Regulations like SOX, if applicable to the business context, and general data protection principles require verifiable controls and audit trails, not just trust. This approach lacks accountability and auditability, making it impossible to demonstrate compliance or investigate potential breaches effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing contact center solutions must adopt a risk-based approach. This involves understanding the types of data being handled, the relevant regulatory landscape, and the operational needs. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying sensitive data types and their associated regulatory requirements. 2. Evaluating the necessity of access to this data for different operational functions, e.g., troubleshooting, reporting. 3. Designing technical controls like RBAC data masking encryption to enforce the principle of least privilege. 4. Implementing robust auditing and monitoring mechanisms to track data access. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating security policies and designs based on evolving threats and regulatory changes. This systematic approach ensures that security and privacy are integrated into the design from the outset, rather than being an afterthought, leading to compliant, secure, and effective contact center solutions. Question 16. Performance analysis shows a consistent increase in average speed of answer (ASA) across multiple skill groups over the past quarter, coupled with a noticeable decline in first contact resolution (FCR) rates. The contact center utilizes Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCED) with integrated workforce management (WFM) and a standard IVR for initial call routing and self-service option. Management is seeking recommendations for design adjustments to address these trends. Which of the following approaches is the most professionally sound and likely to yield sustainable improvements? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of WFM forecasting accuracy and agent adherence to schedules, alongside an analysis of call routing logic and agent skill group configurations to identify potential bottlenecks and misalignments. Option B. Implement stricter call handling time (OT) targets for agents and reduce the allowed wrap-up time to encourage faster call completion. Option C. Immediately increase agent staffing levels by 15% across all skill groups to absorb the increased call volume and reduce ASA. Option D. Redesign the IVR menu to offer more self-service options, aiming to deflect a significant portion of incoming calls. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive review of WFM forecasting accuracy and agent adherence to schedules, alongside an analysis of call routing logic and agent skill group configurations to identify potential bottlenecks and misalignments. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in contact center design, balancing the need for efficient resource utilization with the imperative to meet service level agreements, SLAs, and ensure a positive customer experience. The professional challenge lies in interpreting performance data, understanding the underlying causes of deviations, and proposing solutions that are technically sound, cost-effective, and compliant with the business's operational objectives. The pressure to demonstrate immediate improvements without a thorough root cause analysis can lead to suboptimal or even detrimental design choices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation into the root causes of the increased average speed of answer (ASA) and the corresponding decrease in first contact resolution (FCR). This includes examining call routing logic, agent skill group configuration, workforce management, WFM forecasts, and agent adherence to schedules. Understanding the interplay between these elements is crucial. For instance, if WFM forecasts are consistently inaccurate, leading to understaffing during peak hours, this directly impacts ASA and can force agents to rush interactions, thereby reducing FCR. A design that prioritizes a holistic review of these interconnected components, potentially involving adjustments to routing strategies to better match agent skills to call types, optimizing WFM parameters, and analyzing agent training needs, represents best professional practice. This approach ensures that solutions are targeted and address the actual drivers of performance issues, leading to sustainable improvements in both efficiency and customer satisfaction, aligning with the implicit regulatory and business requirement to provide a reliable and effective service. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately increase agent headcount across all skill groups without a detailed analysis. This is professionally unacceptable because it represents a brute force solution that is likely to be inefficient and costly. It fails to address potential underlying issues such as inefficient routing, poor WFM forecasting, or inadequate agent training. From a regulatory or ethical standpoint, while not directly violating a specific law in this context, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and responsible resource management, which could be seen as a failure to meet implicit business obligations for operational efficiency. Another incorrect approach would be to solely focus on reducing call handling time, OD, by implementing stricter scripting or reducing wrap-up time. This is professionally flawed because it directly contradicts the observed decrease in FCR. Prioritizing AHT reduction at the expense of FCR will likely lead to an increase in repeat calls, thereby negating any perceived efficiency gains and further frustrating customers. This approach fails to uphold the implicit ethical obligation to provide a resolution on the first contact, potentially leading to customer dissatisfaction and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach might be to assume the issue is solely with the IVR and propose extensive changes to the interactive voice response system without correlating IVR performance with agent-level metrics. While IVR plays a role in call deflection and routing, a significant increase in ASA and decrease in FCR points to issues further down the contact path. Focusing solely on the IVR without considering agent performance, WFM, or routing logic is a misdiagnosis and a waste of resources, demonstrating a failure in analytical rigor. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such performance analysis by first establishing a clear understanding of the key performance indicators, KPI, and their interdependencies. A structured problem-solving methodology such as DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, control, is invaluable. This involves clearly defining the problem, measuring current performance, analyzing the root causes, implementing improvements, and establishing controls to sustain the gains. When evaluating potential solutions, professionals must consider their impact on all relevant KPIs, not just one in isolation. They should also consult with stakeholders, including WFM, operations, and agent supervisors, to gather comprehensive insights. The decision-making process should be data-driven, prioritizing solutions that offer the greatest potential for sustainable improvement, while adhering to business objectives and implicit service delivery standards. Question 17. The performance metrics show an increase in customer interaction volume across multiple channels, including voice, email, and chat. The design team is proposing a new unified routing solution to manage these interactions more efficiently. However, There is a concern that the proposed solution might impact how customer personally identifiable information, PI, is handled and stored across these different channels. Considering the regulatory framework for data privacy and security applicable to contact centers operating within the United States, which of the following design considerations is most critical to ensure compliance? Option A. Implementing robust encryption for all data at rest and in transit, ensuring that PII is protected regardless of the channel it originates from or is stored in, and conducting regular audits of access logs to verify compliance with data handling policies. Option B. Prioritizing the integration of the latest AI-powered sentiment analysis tools to improve agent response times and customer satisfaction scores, assuming that data anonymization will be handled by a separate, post-interaction process. Option C. Focusing on the scalability and resilience of the unified routing system to handle peak loads, with the understanding that data security protocols will be addressed as a secondary concern after the core routing functionality is established. Option D. Deploying a solution that offers the most cost-effective integration with existing CRM systems, with minimal upfront investment in new security infrastructure, relying on the assumption that current security measures are adequate for PII protection. The correct answer is A. Implementing robust encryption for all data at rest and in transit, ensuring that PII is protected regardless of the channel it originates from or is stored in, and conducting regular audits of access logs to verify compliance with data handling policies. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing operational efficiency with strict adherence to regulatory compliance, specifically concerning data privacy and security within a contact center environment. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the relevant regulations to a dynamic operational context, ensuring that customer data is handled appropriately across all interaction channels. Careful judgment is required to avoid potential breaches and associated penalties. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive review of all data handling processes against the specified regulatory framework. This ensures that any proposed solution or modification to the contact center infrastructure is not only technically sound, but also legally compliant. By involving legal and compliance teams, the design process embeds regulatory considerations from the outset, mitigating risks and demonstrating due diligence. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining customer trust and avoiding regulatory sanctions. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical implementation without considering data privacy implications fails to meet regulatory requirements. This could lead to unauthorized access or disclosure of sensitive customer information, violating data protection laws. Another incorrect approach that overlooks the need for secure data transmission across all channels, including potentially less secure legacy systems, creates vulnerabilities. This oversight can result in data breaches during transit, which is a direct contravention of security mandates. Finally, an approach that assumes existing security measures are sufficient without a formal audit or validation against current regulations is professionally negligent. This can lead to non-compliance due to outdated or inadequate security controls, exposing the organization to significant legal and reputational damage. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape. This involves identifying all relevant data privacy and security laws. Subsequently, a risk assessment should be conducted to pinpoint potential areas of non-compliance within the current and proposed contact center design. Collaboration with legal, compliance, and security experts is paramount throughout the design and implementation phases. Finally, ongoing monitoring and regular audits are essential to ensure sustained compliance. Question 18. Analysis of a proposed Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCED) solution design for a financial services organization reveals a requirement to comply with data privacy regulations concerning customer interaction recordings and associated metadata. The design must ensure that data is retained only for the legally mandated period and is then securely and permanently deleted. Which design approach best addresses these regulatory obligations? Option A. Configure the UCCED solution to store recordings and metadata for a fixed, extended period, assuming that any potential future regulatory changes will be addressed through system patches. Option B. Implement a UCCED solution with integrated data retention policies that automatically purge recordings and metadata after the specified retention period, coupled with robust audit trails for all data access and deletion activities. Option C. Design the UCCED solution to store all customer interaction recordings and metadata indefinitely for potential future business intelligence and compliance auditing, relying on ad hoc manual deletion requests. Option D. Focus the UCCED design on maximizing storage capacity for historical data, with the understanding that data privacy concerns can be managed through access control lists and user permissions alone. Correct answer is B. Implement a UCCED solution with integrated data retention policies that automatically purge recordings and metadata after the specified retention period, coupled with robust audit trails for all data access and deletion activities. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in contact center design, balancing the need for efficient data handling with stringent data privacy regulations. Specifically, the question probes the understanding of how to design a Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCE) solution to comply with data retention and privacy requirements, which are critical for maintaining customer trust and avoiding legal penalties. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying regulatory mandates to technical design choices, ensuring that sensitive customer information is handled appropriately throughout its lifecycle within the contact center. The correct approach involves implementing a design that explicitly addresses data minimization and secure deletion, aligning with principles often found in data protection frameworks. This approach demonstrates best professional practice by proactively building compliance into the system architecture. It prioritizes the protection of personally identifiable information, PI, by ensuring that data is only retained for as long as necessary for legitimate business purposes and is then securely disposed of, thereby minimizing the risk of data breaches and unauthorized access. This aligns with the spirit of regulations that emphasize data subject rights and the principle of accountability. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing data storage for potential future analysis, without considering retention limits or secure deletion mechanisms, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This oversight could lead to the unauthorized retention of sensitive data beyond legal requirements, increasing the organization's liability in the event of a data incident. Another incorrect approach that relies on manual processes for data deletion is also professionally unacceptable. Manual processes are prone to human error, inconsistency, and are not scalable for the volume of data typically handled by a contact center, thus failing to meet the rigor expected by data protection laws. Finally, an approach that ignores the need for audit trails for data access and deletion fails to provide the necessary transparency and accountability required by many regulatory frameworks, making it impossible to demonstrate compliance. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a thorough understanding of applicable data protection regulations, a proactive approach to risk management, and the ability to translate legal requirements into technical design specifications. It involves engaging with legal and compliance teams early in the design process, conducting thorough risk assessments, and prioritizing solutions that embed privacy by design and by default. Question 19. Compliance review shows that the proposed design for new contact center solution must ensure the protection of personally identifiable information, PI, in accordance with U.S. federal data privacy regulations. Which design approach best satisfies these requirements while maintaining operational efficiency? Option A. Implement comprehensive data masking and encryption for PII across agent desktop applications, data in transit, and stored data. Option B. Mask PII only at the database level, assuming network security will prevent unauthorized access during transit. Option C. Design the system to capture all PII without immediate security controls, planning to address security measures post-deployment. Option D. Rely primarily on agent training and manual procedures to ensure PII is handled securely. The correct answer is A. Implement comprehensive data masking and encryption for PII across agent desktop applications, data in transit, and stored data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in contact center design, where the need for efficient call routing and agent utilization must be balanced against stringent regulatory requirements for data privacy and security, specifically concerning personally identifiable information, PI. The challenge lies in ensuring that the design not only meets functional objectives, but also adheres to the strict mandates of the specified regulatory framework, which in this context is assumed to be U.S. federal regulations relevant to data handling in a contact center environment. Failure to adequately protect PII can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a robust, multi-layered security strategy that integrates data masking and encryption at multiple points within the contact center infrastructure. This includes masking PII within the agent desktop application, encrypting data in transit to and from the contact center platform, and ensuring that any stored data containing PII is also encrypted. This approach aligns with best practices for data protection mandated by U.S. federal regulations such as HIPAA, if applicable to the industry, and general data privacy principles. By proactively addressing PII protection at the design stage, the solution minimizes the risk of unauthorized access or disclosure, ensuring compliance and safeguarding customer information. This demonstrates a commitment to responsible data stewardship, which is a cornerstone of professional practice in regulated industries. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on agent training and manual processes for PII protection is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. While training is important, it is insufficient as a sole control mechanism. Human error is inevitable, and manual processes are prone to inconsistencies and oversights, increasing the risk of PII breaches. This approach fails to implement technical safeguards required by many U.S. federal regulations, which emphasize the need for robust security measures. Implementing PII masking only at the database level, without addressing it in the agent interface or during transit, creates vulnerabilities. Agents may still inadvertently view or record sensitive information in their desktop applications, or PII could be intercepted during transmission. This partial implementation leaves critical gaps in the data protection strategy, failing to meet the comprehensive security requirements expected under U.S. data privacy laws. Designing the system to capture all PII without any explicit controls for access or retention, assuming that future security measures will be implemented, is a gross dereliction of professional duty and a direct violation of regulatory principles. This build first, secure later mentality is inherently risky and demonstrates a lack of foresight and responsibility. It exposes the organization to immediate and severe compliance risks, as many regulations require security to be a foundational element of system design, not an afterthought. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing contact center solutions must adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing compliance with relevant regulations from the outset. This involves a thorough understanding of the data being handled, the potential risks associated with its exposure, and the specific legal and ethical obligations. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying all sensitive data elements PI, PHI, PCI, etc. 2. Understanding the applicable regulatory landscape, e.g., HIPAA, CCPA, PCI DSS. 3. Designing technical and procedural controls to protect this data at every stage of its lifecycle: capture, processing, storage, transmission, disposal. 4. Integrating security and privacy by design principles into the architecture. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating security measures to adapt to evolving threats and regulations. This proactive and comprehensive approach ensures that the design solution is not only functional, but also legally compliant and ethically sound, thereby protecting both the organization and its customers. Question 20. Process analysis reveals that a new Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise, UCCED, deployment is being designed for a financial services organization operating under strict data privacy regulations. The design team is considering how to handle customer interaction data, including sensitive financial details and personally identifiable information, PI. Which design approach best ensures compliance with regulatory frameworks governing data privacy and security? Option A. Rely on the default security and privacy settings provided by Cisco UCCED, assuming they meet all regulatory requirements for the financial services industry. Option B. Collect all available customer interaction data to build comprehensive customer profiles for future marketing opportunities, and implement security measures only after the system is fully operational. Option C. Store all customer interaction data unencrypted in a central repository to facilitate easy access for reporting and analytics, with a plan to encrypt it only if a specific regulatory audit is imminent. Option D. Implement robust encryption for all stored data and enforce strict access controls based on user roles, while minimizing the collection of PII to only what is absolutely necessary for call routing and service delivery. The correct answer is D. Implement robust encryption for all stored data and enforce strict access controls based on user roles, while minimizing the collection of PII to only what is absolutely necessary for call routing and service delivery. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the technical requirements of designing a contact center solution with the stringent regulatory obligations of data privacy and security, specifically concerning customer personally identifiable information, PI. The challenge lies in ensuring that the design not only meets functional needs, but also adheres to the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and robust security measures, as mandated by relevant regulations. Careful judgment is required to avoid overcollection of data, ensure appropriate consent mechanisms are in place, and implement technical controls that protect sensitive information throughout its lifecycle within the contact center environment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a privacy-by-design methodology. This involves proactively embedding data protection principles into the architecture and configuration of the Cisco Unified Contact Center Enterprise (UCCED) solution from the outset. Specifically, it focuses on identifying and classifying sensitive data, implementing access controls based on the principle of least privilege, and ensuring that data retention policies are aligned with regulatory requirements and business needs. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of non-compliance, reduces the likelihood of data breaches, and builds customer trust. Adherence to regulations like GDPR, if applicable to the jurisdiction, or similar data protection laws would necessitate such a privacy-centric design. An incorrect approach that involves collecting all available customer data without a clear business justification or consent mechanism fails to adhere to the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation. This can lead to regulatory violations, as many data protection frameworks require that data collected be adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary for the specified purposes. Another incorrect approach, which is to implement security measures only after the system is deployed, ignores the principle of privacy by design and security by design. This reactive approach is more costly to remediate, increases the risk of breaches during the interim period, and is often in direct violation of regulatory mandates that require security to be an integral part of system design. A third incorrect approach, which is to rely solely on vendor default configurations without a thorough review against specific regulatory requirements, is a failure to exercise due diligence. Vendor defaults may not meet the specific compliance obligations of the organization or its operating jurisdiction, leading to potential non-compliance. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape for the specific jurisdiction in which the contact center will operate. This should be followed by a detailed assessment of the data to be processed, identifying PII and other sensitive information. The design process should then integrate privacy and security controls at every stage, from data collection and storage to processing and deletion. Regular audits and reviews, along with ongoing training for personnel, are crucial for maintaining compliance.